capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I know.
Really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. So tonight, we have Dan Plaat from the Three Left Show back on again, and we're going to be talking about how to do local politics the 1950s way. This is installment number 3 of our series. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Excited to be here.
All right, that's good.
Oh, my favorite part of 2 weeks, besides the end of the pay period.
Yeah, well, that's a crucial part as well. Things still going well with the new job?
For the most part.
Nice.
Sometimes there are limits put down, like I actually do need to show up right at 8:30 or something like that.
Oh,
And other such annoyances, but nothing that's game breaking.
for sure.
Yeah, it's just it's everything else at the moment. But there are some nice things that happen. Like I helped a little bit with painting a wall for the new tool library that the
Cool.
Historic Foundation is starting up.
Very cool.
So that's nice.
Like a mural? Are you talking about, or just
No, tool library.
tool library? Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
I was just painting one of the walls.
Oh, cool.
While one of the other guys was doing the filling in the floor with concrete, patching the floor. Because this is the foundation's in an old warehouse building, and there's a corner of it that's the perfect size for the tool library, or they had other stuff in there before, and they didn't need it to look nice. And so kind of the shelves are good. Now we're just painting the walls that were masonry, or at least they're wood on masonry, and other things. So yeah,
Cool.
so I think in a few more work days, it should be good to go. And yeah, so among other things, last week I helped facilitate a breakout group, group of 7 out in a larger group of almost 200, or it was more than that, which was one of the big public input gathering meetings that the Board of Regents in New York is doing. They are reevaluating graduation measures.
Oh, interesting.
So this would be actually reforming the actual underpinning like goals of the education system in New York. You know, what does one need to qualify to graduate high school? And if you change that in a strong enough direction, it will actually erode standardized testing and all the things we hate, and actually have
Nice.
more liberal Montessori education, which is what all the educators, teachers, and whatnot want. So there is a general consensus, which I'm very happy about.
Standardized sucks, yeah.
That the students too. There's a general consensus when it comes to the business sector. They don't have any, like, they're not pro standardized testing. They just kind of buried about the need for practical skills. They just want graduates to have practical skills. I'm sure they do have lists of what that means if you look at the transcripts. I can just tell you I was facilitating some higher education people, and the consensus among any higher education is that it should move to portfolio-based project assessments based on practice.
That makes a lot more sense.
Production,
Yeah.
what students are actually doing.
Right.
And interestingly, I actually found some notes I took from a book called like the 12 Steps to Political Relevation, like how to become a citizen. Like what does it mean? And it was like 12 steps. And one of the steps was like have a well-rounded education, and he listed what that is. So if you just want to talk about current events or something till I find it
Sure,
again.
sure. I myself am starting a new job tomorrow. It's a company that I've worked for, but I've gotten promoted this year, so I'm now going to be head of the gardening department for the landscaping company I work for. It's going to be a lot more design work and more money, of course. And then also this year, I'll be getting a 3% bonus on any designs or 3% commission on any designs that I sell. So that's exciting. Big potential there. So I
Isn't
start that
that
tomorrow.
first off, hell yeah.
Thank you.
Second, isn't that an incentive for you to make the projects more expensive for the client?
Yeah, it is. It is. So yeah, gonna have to balance the
That was
clients
always a
versus.
problem I noticed with like that when the architect's fee is a percentage of the project cost.
Hmm.
It's kind of assumed that like the budget's going to be set by the client, but like what if it goes over budget?
Hmm.
What if
Hmm.
it's like what if the architect proposes something really?
Yeah. Luckily, we work with a lot of upscale apartments and parks, city parks, and stuff like that. So they tend to have deeper pockets. So if we do
Mhm.
go over budget, most of the time, if nothing else, then to save face, to show just how hoity-toity and exclusive they are, they'll be, oh, yeah, that's fine. You go right ahead with your plans.
I got off the phone actually today with a fellow
Thank
volunteer
you,
at the
Natalie.
radio station, and they were proposing, envisioning a project that just to kind of have decorations that are on these folding doors.
Hmm.
And besides just painting them a bland white color, because so they can be used in a neutral way,
Hmm.
she's like, let's put stuff on the doors like garlands and decorations, which can be changed out, which is a
For
good
sure.
idea.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think if anything, there should just be the means to attach various decorations. But then she's talking about having a particular type of decoration that included lights that would eventually cost like $120.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking like, why are you going for this ostentatious
Yeah,
like
really.
thinking of like let's spend a lot of money on something that could easily just be painted on the door or something. And the
Right.
second I said like, wait, I thought we were gonna paint the doors like green or like a garden. They're
Hmm.
like, oh no, they have to be white because they're for other events. I'm like, because she wants to have a garden motif. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna attach some fake plants on it,
Right. Yeah, that would make sense.
and just do that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
do
right.
that. Why? What's with this lights thing?
Lights.
It's
Yeah.
going in a large room that's well lit.
Hmm.
An old church which has plenty of daylighting.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know what these lights are meant to do, but she has the kind of I don't know faux fancy aesthetic going on. But I did find the page I wanted. Was
Cool.
thinking about. So,
Go
and I
ahead.
actually spent some time looking at my bookshelf to find this because I'm going to submit this as my public comment. So, if you do live in New York, um, oh, I don't have it prepared, but like, because the link that I would like to send you is actually on my desktop at work.
Oh, okay.
But it,
Is it something
I
I could
think
search
it's.
for quick?
Oh wait, I did have the Twitter hashtag. It's basically New York graduate measures.
So hashtag New York graduate measures,
Yeah,
like
something like
all
that.
spelled out in New York or something.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh no, it would probably be NY.
Oh, okay.
And I think Regents might be in there. New York Regents
Let's see if we can find
graduate
it.
measures, or do a Google search.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, I hardly ever use Twitter.
My goal is to get those links that I saved from the Zoom call that I did at work. I actually got paid to facilitate a meeting. I was a dream come true, in a way, because I was planning on
Nice.
taking personal time off, but I didn't have to. While you do that, I'm going to list out. There's 8 things. So this guy, his name is Alter Mosley, and the book is called 12 Steps Towards Political Relevation.
Okay.
And so it's like a framework for a necessary education for the 21st century citizen. What to really have by age 18. First, a 12th grade reading level. So be able to read Moby Dick, a book like that, and understand it. 2, write a
That's 12th grade,
1,000
huh?
word. Apparently,
Okay.
so I mean, if you graduate high school, you should have a 12th grade reading level, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
how many American students are graduating at maybe an 8th grade reading level?
I think that's like the standard American reading level.
It is the standard.
So.
Exactly. Which, what does it say about high school schools then? That people peak
Right.
at 8th grade and then they don't get
Right.
any more literacy after that.
Yeah. Bizarre.
Or that I think when they're in high school, all of their schooling is just like bullshit. So it's like, I'm going to bullshit my way through English.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Find the right spark notes for it and change it just enough to not get caught.
And obviously, the graduation measures in some states are just abysmal. It's like they only need 2 years, 2 years worth of passing grades or something.
Right.
So write a 1,000-word essay on any detail, feeling, or knowledge. And granted, this isn't something that you do as part of a test, like in a day. It means that in your portfolio of like things that you present at the end to a committee of teachers, you have, including like a really well-written essay. And be able to prove that you can do that. So number 3, to have a general method of, knowledge of history that's unromanticized and gives the factuals of history and an understanding of the complexities, particularly a history of their place of residence. So their local history.
Unromanticized. That sounds like some CRT territory.
It probably is. 4, a flexible grasp of space in the creation of some type of art. So the knowledge of the creative process without a hierarchy of quality. So types of art. Could be ceramics. It could be film. It could be music. It could
TikTok
be
dances.
It could be anything. Anything that requires a creative process. So, which is something that a lot of art classes, which are very literally paint by numbers, like here's how to do a type of like pointillism, and we're going to make a pointillism picture.
Right.
And that's not really teaching the creative process, unless like if you already know the creative process, you're going to make something nice. If you don't, you're going to make something really basic, or literally have to rely on the teacher providing you a picture to copy, which a lot of art classes kind of rely on. They're not teaching creative process. They're simply allowing students to practice it if they already know it. And if they don't know it, then they're just going to copy, which is not learning.
Right.
Not preparing them to be able to make art later.
Yeah.
Because, well, yeah.
They're not demonstrating.
A lot of people, like, you want them to, it would be nice if they could sketch their ideas out, but they've never done it before. So they just have to talk and take 10 minutes later, you just want to like slap. Well, you want to slap them. Want to get all patriarchal on them.
Yeah,
so 5, the tech and technique of science, as well as a moderate knowledge of things like cell biology, modern physics, models of the universe, logic, and ecology.
Yeah. Mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell.
One could say it's a powerhouse of the cell, yeah. But more importantly, the techniques of science, right? Which is sort of included, but much science curriculum is more about the moderate knowledge part and not teaching students how to actually conduct experiments. Or if they do, they're just very limited lab, experiments that aren't really experiments as much as just again following instructions, as if science is like baking, or whatever, or a creative process. But really, people treat it like something you need real authorities and instructions and stuff. So and the ability to discern good information and bad information. So number 6. Early on, to have a full knowledge of bodies. This refers to
full knowledge of bodies.
That their own body, one's own body. So it's referring to phys ed, but more on laying down a methodology that to learn that physical education depends on others' strengths. That actually, when it comes to doing things, that the things in phys ed should be collaborative efforts, which team sports does, but it's one team versus another team. What about something where everyone in the class is collaborating?
Mm-hmm.
It's always about pitting people against each other or doing individual, like working out or exercise or something.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we can discuss how limiting that is. Number 7, leadership training. Every classroom has its own student government with rotating duties. And this is also requiring that classes be, about 12, and that schools are no bigger than 300, which is kind of the dream of the Montessori model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something that so you could actually have scaling governance from classroom to grade, to age, to then the whole school, which the most you get is a student council, which is elected out of a whole student body, but it's not like it's who's already prepared to be a leader or some kind of organizer. There's no training on how to do any of these things, to do politics. And participation in government, which is still a half a semester in high school, is just drivel. I don't even remember what it was like, what the curriculum was, except maybe like what the 3 branches of government were, and like schoolhouse rock style content. Maybe registering to vote. Was part of it, but that was it. No political science really, outside of a schoolhouse rock video.
Right. How a bill
Not
becomes
literally,
a law,
but
yeah.
something like it.
Right.
And the last, it's only 8. Speak another language to hold a conversation.
And even hold a conversation. Okay.
Now, there's importantly that when in all of these categories, there's no grading, which is that means that you're judged by quality and participation and performance. So it's just getting that to start the conversation, I guess. How have you did you have a take on the Oscars?
Oh boy.
Did you already cover that in a previous stream?
No, I haven't. I usually tend to avoid these sorts of things because, like,
You can do that.
what do they really mean overall? It focuses so much of the world's attention on these
Well, it's
tiny little
it's
incidents.
one of those silly things that's really complex. Like on the face of it, it's irrationally silly.
Yeah.
But it's also very complex at the same time.
Yeah.
I know in the past there's been other like events instances like that where everyone's talking about it because everyone can relate to it differently, and it touches on a lot of different issues all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a class dynamic at play as well, but let's say you take that out of it. And,
especially in this case when there's everyone involved is multimillionaires.
anyway,
Done well.
I in my last episode last week,
Mm.
I bookended my show with discussion of it.
Sure.
First, what came to mind for myself, and then I ended the show since my theme of the show, which is about TERFs, that reactionaries simply prioritize protection when better, like lefties, prioritize solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
What people need is not protection; they need solidarity.
Okay.
And so I don't repeat it over and over again for 2 hours, but at least by the end, that's the theme with it. And FD Signifier and this other streamer Shark30, younger guy.
Yep, I know.
And has had a similar message that this is not protection. You're not protecting women by using violence
people.
to just feel better about yourself. That's what Will Smith was doing. And because let's say, even if it was a hurtful joke, she doesn't need protection. She just needs solidarity, which can come in the form of a speech or any other form of action
Oh yeah,
that can and cannot be disruptive. But
sure.
it's
Had
interesting
he
to
just
point
done
that out.
had he just done the yelling out part, that would have been disruptive and shocking as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
he would have gotten his message across that way as well.
Mm.
Um,
But
I
anyway,
also thought
okay.
it was okay. Well, you want if you want to move on, that's fine because I
No,
don't
no, no.
have
You
real
can do.
strong
No, 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 no.
feelings.
You didn't care for this topic, so.
No, that's okay.
Um. So yeah, that's the high points of my week. Besides all the other dramas. Um. But things are okay with the station. So, but
That's
there's
good.
also a lot of things that still need to be done. But I am getting some commitment from people to do it.
Nice.
Um. There's just this one person who's just really flaky. I think she's a paid organizer, which is kind
Mm,
of distressing because she's
yeah.
such a mess. Um, totally anonymous. I'll let her that, but she
Okay.
wants to have a show on the station, and I just
Mm,
for the last 3 months I've just been asking, can you send me the show? Can you send me the show? And it's like I suggest ways of her getting it to me, and it's like, look, she has to give me a show every week. If she can't do
yeah.
it once, then
Can't
she's
even
not
do it
going
the
to
first
be able to
time.
do it, and it's disappointing because I want her to because it's not the linchpin, but I mean, it would make it a lot easier for me to cut my show down because her hour could go after mine. Now I have to figure out what I do with my second hour. And, but I'm just a few episodes away from going down to an hour where I can not only talk about local things, but interview them about it, feel
Hmm.
comfortable about having guests. Like, for example, this woman who is a court advocate for United Tenants of Albany. Um, and she made a post which was a fundraiser for herself, which is strike one against whatever's going on. Because if she's a volunteer for an organization that has a budget, then why isn't she promoting a fundraiser for the organization so that they can pay her a wage? Why is she going on GoFundMe
Hmm.
for a wage
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
do
that's weird.
her work? Second, her work wasn't just to go to court and help tenants fight bad landlords. She made her post because, I mean, maybe because she actually wants people with money to donate. She made her post about finding common ground or just talking to each other, which is just a very milquetoast thing,
Hmm.
which I've heard all my life. Just like we're not talking to each other, we're polarized between tenants and landlords. Because what I learned quickly being a court advocate was that there are actually a lot of good landlords that are really stretched thin. Why? Because they're not they're not a corporation. They're usually an individual who just have a lot more bills actually,
Hmm.
and rents simply, help pay the bills. Um, even when it's market rate, I guess. But some landlords, some owners, I don't call them landlords. I prefer to call them owners to distinguish them
Yeah.
from people who really are landlords who own
Who do the
100
property
properties.
management
Yeah, who
company?
do
Well,
property
that
management.
too.
Because I
Yeah.
want these distinctions, because otherwise they get lumped together, and I hate that. And I
Hmm.
kind of want to shake her a little bit. I'm like, what are you talking about? This whole this, and like we shouldn't have this. We can't talk to each other if we have this animosity, antagonistic relationship,
Hmm.
and we can't build relationships to solve problems, in the comment, in the public, if we have this antagonistic relationship. Which sounds
Hmm.
to me like all of the defeatists who basically let the union movement and labor movement from the 60s and 70s basically disintegrate during
Yeah.
our lifetimes.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, well, now when we could have a tenant movement, now you're saying we need to make nice with the owners that are also at most middle class,
Hmm.
um, but maybe state workers or something like that. And I'm not opposed to uniting with these people to recognize that the system of private property ownership actually exploits everyone who isn't a big
Uh-huh.
capitalist. Because just
Hmm.
because you
Hmm.
own three buildings doesn't it makes you maybe petty bourgeois, but you're not bourgeois. You're not the bourgeois.
Right. You're not
And that's
affecting
but
elections.
that's
Yeah.
class consciousness that just in a lot of activists and volunteers doesn't exist. And it's
Hmm.
sort of I find it a challenge or difficulty in when to introduce class conscious topics in the conversation.
Hmm.
And it's hard to just have teach ins on it. I mean, you can, but who will show up unless you've already built those relationships? And if you have
That's great,
relationships,
Natalie.
how do you build a relationship unless it's to, what do you build it around if it isn't just to educate them on class solidarity over just everyone getting along, because that's how that's what they see the goal in, because they are, because they're just good Christians, I guess, and they don't want to fight. Which is a theme. It's I'm not, don't want to say I'm not anti-religious, but it's something that seems to, at least it's the way that it's fused with capitalist ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just venting about that, so I don't have to do it on Facebook and make enemies.
No, I hear you.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I see that theme a lot too, as well as the idea that you should just be happy with your place in life, your station in life. Don't make too many waves. Be grateful. Be grateful first of all for what you have, and then don't look to have anything better. Really, I see that theme a lot among a lot of devout Christians.
well, we're all running out of things that we could lose.
Yeah,
But
right.
I also, on Friday, I listened to the Jordan Chariton of Status Quo's live stream of the announcement of the union in Staten Island.
Yeah,
So, and I bring that up because
exciting stuff.
I'll be mentioning it here and there as I
Very
cover
cool.
the next two parts, which are literally um, voter registration is where we left off, and then the next booklet is the political campaign, which has a lot of overlaps. So bear with me as I skip redundant techniques. But
No problem.
we left off in the political precinct,
Uh
which
huh.
was about literally organizing in your neighborhood first
Mm-hmm.
and foremost, whether it's with a party or for a cause. You should don't lone wolf it. Have at least one other person
Yep.
helping you.
Just
So
one
you
other
just need
person.
to find one other leftist, one other maybe progressive person who it maybe not be totally radicalized, because I find it easier to find people who are progressives, not radicalized, but
Right.
willing to do
Hell
community
of a lot more.
work with a left leaning edge. Maybe they're a
Mm-hmm.
Bernie
Mm-hmm.
crat, someone who's a full solid Democrat, but just like actually voted Bernie or was a
Right.
Bernie delegate or something,
Right.
which I still come across.
Very
People
true.
who like tout that as like, this is my bona fide as being like a
Right. Right.
progressive.
I'm a
I
Bernie
was a Bernie
Democrat.
Democrat
Yeah.
against all
Uh
odds,
huh.
as they stand in a circle of people who are more left than them.
For sure. Yeah. I just want to say welcome to James and also Natalie. Good to have you in the chat. Good to see you again.
Same,
Um,
uh,
yeah.
pleasure. So did I leave off? I left off on, well, yeah. So I just left off on registration. So what we left off was with recruiting of block captains. That in the
Right.
past, in the 50s, there were three groups that you could recruit for your block captains.
Oh, could you give the title for the book one more time for the people who may not have seen the previous
Yes.
episodes?
So this is an action course in practical politics published by the Chamber of Commerce, and this is number 3 of 8, titled "The Political Precinct." Previously, we covered the individual in politics, which
Hmm?
main thesis is that there is no individual in politics; it is a collective
Right.
group effort,
Has to be. Hmm.
just as anything in society is, in
Right.
fact, a societal effort. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
have knowledge. You cannot have any of these
Mm-hmm.
things except in a collective sense, which is really interesting to when you actually get that as your way of thinking, and you really feel insane when you interact with most of the rest of our society that only thinks in terms of people acting on each other like
Mm-hmm.
literally free atoms.
Oh yeah.
So we had recruiting block captain, and if you could turn down your audio a little bit, I'm getting some echo.
Sure. Turn it down just a little bit for you.
So getting prospects, there were still getting some,
Really?
but
I'm not
anyway.
even saying anything.
Not
That's
from
weird.
you, from me. I'm hearing my voice.
Oh, you're hearing your voice. Oh, that's strange.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Maybe I'll turn
it
down
was
a
like
bit.
it was homemakers, retirees, and basically like the already active, politically active, which you can find here and there. But again, if I'm looking to help them with my socialist organizing, that's much shorter supply. But
Yeah, that's for
if
sure.
you outreach to people in your city or area, and then you kind of take turns on organizing your area, your election, and it's proposing you do it by election district, which is a very self-contained, like few hundred households.
Right.
Because if you can do it that, then you can scale it up.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you need to go cast a wider net somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to target your organizing because it's best to organize based on targeting people. Otherwise, you're basically the only way to do it is for mass elected office, which also creates its own limits in what you'll talk about or how you'll interact with people. Like when I'm
Absolutely.
petitioning for governor, I can talk to anyone and ask them if they're registered. I can do it at any bus stop or the farmer's market or a public event.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not targeted. It's basically just a quick,
Yeah. Just
here's the Green Party, flyer, um, and what we're about and the platform, and maybe you'll join us. It isn't. Here's like a particular issue that you can likely relate to, um, and so on. Or, well, we'll get into that further as we go forward.
sure.
So registration. So we're just talking about voter registration, but obviously what's talked about here can relate to any other kind of organizing. Getting people's contact information,
Mm-hmm.
petitions for, and again, election doesn't have to be just the electioneering for a public office. It could be a union election.
There you go. Yeah, it could be.
So you can put in the context of the recent victory in Staten Island,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be another one in a few weeks, as they want to have votes in all the four warehouses there. And
Right.
when they talk about and I listened to them how they did it, and there'll be some echoes from this,
Cool.
but also obviously some changes too, and I'll point those out. Registration. Not the least of the committeeman's or precinct leader duties is to see that the voter is qualified to vote in compliance with the local law. In fact, this is his most important responsibility. Obviously, a voter who isn't registered can't vote. And since potential voters are notoriously negligent about this, many votes will be lost unless the citizen is jogged and reminded by someone, which means the committeeman, that he has not yet registered and is informed of the time and place to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from How to Go Into Politics, written by a Scott. No last name, apparently. Or Scott's the last name.
Ah.
Having recruited whatever block captains and clerical workers they can. The precinct leader then prepares his precinct organization for the first job, getting the party voters to register. But of course, if they're party voters, then they wouldn't be registered yet, would they? But whatever. Precinct leaders and block captains are seldom surprised to learn how many members of their party are either not registered or have allowed their registration to lapse because they failed to vote. Countless
Makes
election
sense.
results reflect the importance of this. In 1958, Maine, traditionally Republican stronghold, went Democratic by a 2-to-1 margin, largely because of a comprehensive registration drive. Commenting on the election results, the new U.S. News and World Report said that leaders of organized labor worked hard in the campaign. Most endorsed the Democratic ticket and helped to roll up a record registration in the state. In Portland, registration drives put close to 1,000 new Democrats on the voting list. Half of many new Republican registrations were made. So now let's talk about the timing. Most states have two arrangements for registration. The first can be called a centralized one, Central registration. A person may register this way at the Board of Elections or county courthouse during regular office hours. Now, of course, if they have a full-time job and the office hours coincide, when are they
Uh-huh.
supposed to go?
That's a good question.
You
Your
have to be
half-hour
able to take
lunch
a day
break just.
off, or maybe you just don't have a full-time labor job because you're bourgeois.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, that too.
So
That often
anywhere from
helps.
a week or two before election or 2 months before election, depending on the state, though some states put it at 6 months or a whole year, even maybe. The second kind is one that is precinct registration. Anywhere from a week or two before election to 2 months before election, depending on the state, registration places are hired in or near every precinct, and registration books for that precinct are brought, because this is when registrations actually had to be done by paper with books, apparently, because you couldn't fill out paper then put it in a binder or something. Maybe there were no binders. When were binders invented?
That's a good question.
Let's learn. Look that up while I keep reading.
Those are the hard-hitting questions.
The 3-ring binder.
Uh-huh.
This registration period is generally short, anywhere from 1 day to a week at stated certain hours. Imagine that. You can only register to vote, but like during a drive. And this is kind of interesting, where like there would be a scheduled drive on the year, and that's when activists would do it. Now, without a schedule of any kind, because maybe we're more flexible in that, it's like you can do it any time. It's up to the activists now. Sort of interesting. But maybe that means there's less of it happening. But again, it's all kind of paradoxical in that more happened in the past because it had to be all people, like in-person stuff.
That's true.
But also things were just more organized generally because of the climate and all of the work of many, many, many leftists in the interwar era. So, preparation for a drive. I'm sorry. And it mentions that in 4 states, the precinct leader will generally time his registration drive to start about a week ahead of the precinct registration days, continue through the last precinct registration day. Because they're collecting names and then they're handing that info over to be put in the books. In 4 states, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and Virginia, it is necessary to pay a poll tax to qualify as a voter in state elections.
That's the connection. Gotcha.
Now, puts in parentheses, poll tax requirements were removed for all national elections by the 24th Amendment adopted in 1964. Oh, that's the distinction. It removes poll tax for national elections. But if you want to be registered to vote in state or local elections, you still have to pay.
Still fair game, yeah. Oh,
fuckers.
Yep.
Motherfuckers.
Yep.
The last day to pay poll taxes is usually set long before precinct registration days, often several months. In these states, political workers attempting to get out their vote have to conduct a poll tax drive and registration drive, to actually pay for this tax. So that people who are poor maybe could vote, working class. There are 2 steps in preparing for the registration drive. First is clerical. Leader and his helpers make out those index cards for every voter on the registration list. They then sort these cards by streets and check them against the phone book. In doing this, they will have no cards for number of addresses. But the thing is, people's contact information isn't put in the phone book anymore. Is it? Do Yellow Pages still give addresses with names? When is that data collected? How is it collected?
I don't even know.
I guess the same way as before, but I guess because I've tried to look up addresses or phone numbers using Yellow Pages, and I believe it's been absolutely useless since 2010. Yeah, and it's not always the case that you can go door knocking and go by names on mailboxes, because some people don't put their names on the mailbox, or they've kept old names on the mailbox. Like if they're apartments that get a lot of turnover, you'll see a name on the mailbox of someone who left 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And someone answers the door and they go like, oh, I don't know that person. They don't live here. And it's like, oh, they must have just moved or something. Or they'll say like, oh, that was the last person who lived here, if they're knowledgeable. But then of course, like you have to like, okay, so it's like if I had a book of all the addresses and write down, okay, what's your name and can I get your contact info? That would be the extra steps there. First, the precinct leader makes sure that all his block captain and workers know one another. You know, so this is obvious, but it's often forgotten. And it talks about, making friendly contact. Often a person you visit may not want to talk at the moment. Smile and thank them to try and arrange another more convenient time to call. The second thing the leader does, and this is something that I learned, it's very time consuming, but like if you're door knocking and you have lit, if you ring the bell, they're not home or they're not answering, you simply write on the lit, like, sorry, I missed you. Call to talk, and you put it. And this is usually something the candidate can do because then it's like the candidate's signature. Obviously, if a poll worker is doing this, it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not a poll worker, I mean a volunteer.
Right.
Who isn't the candidate. The second thing the leader does at this meeting, a meeting of all the volunteers, is to explain to his workers that a duplicate card file has been prepared for almost every dwelling unit and voter in the precinct. But there are still gaps. The first job is to fill them. Door-to-door canvassing must be done to pick up information on those homes where the phone is unlisted and there's no record of anyone having registered. So basically do the job of the census, which is an amazingly large and laborious process, and do that. But it's interesting to note that the whole the ordeal of the census, that the census just never had enough workers and they were constantly trying to get more people and hiring. And because I thought there was 3 different deadlines that passed and they were still saying, oh no, you can still apply and be a census worker. And I actually applied and I was set up for the next step to basically be called in to be trained, and I didn't get it.
Oh,
so
weird.
it's like I was left hanging. But it's like, and I was asking when census workers were coming by, hey, how are things going on that front? I was set to join you, but I didn't get the call back. Did they actually have enough people? It was very odd.
Yeah.
But imagine how many people the census has to hire to get to do the actual official count. And then the fact that political parties actually used to have enough volunteers, or maybe at least this book is sort of saying that you should have enough people to basically do the work that the census would do, to actually catalog everyone who lives in an area. But that's why the precinct is sort of the starting point, because okay, you're not doing it for a lot, it's just 100 houses. You can do it for 100, can't you? To catalog everyone who lives in 100 houses. It's something that one person could do if if you put some weekend bit of your weekend to it, to lone wolf it, just to have that information. But then you're probably exhausted, and then that's why having more people to use that information, and that's kind of why I haven't jumped on doing this stuff, because it's like, if I'm going to do it, I want to make sure it goes to something, because by next year, half of it, and here's the thing with turnover, is that by next year, all that information may be worthless.
That's true.
Or outdated.
That's true.
And the turnover between tenants, jobs, so writing down what they do is a fool's errand. It's just, everything is changing too fast for people, and it makes everyone insane. And it also makes organizing near impossible. But
how do you have long-term commitments to anything?
Let's talk to Smalls about how in a workplace, and this is the thing about labor organizing, that's there's too much turnover in too many places. You just can't organize anywhere because there's just too much turnover. In the Amazon warehouse, turnover is 150%. They kept repeating this during the press conference, and which hasn't been memed yet. It hasn't been memed yet. It should be. But it's how did they overcome this? And
good
obvious, and the first thought is that they would relate is just like their whole argument was about you don't have to like people leave because things are too bad. It's time to stop quitting and fight where you stand. And this is an attitude that we all kind of need to take and stop having this
Absolutely.
attitude of I need to go somewhere else. I need to leave this hostile environment. You got to
Right.
stick where you are and make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And find the people who are just as tired and want to leave just as much. And if you find everyone who wants to leave, you probably have enough people to do a walkout
Yep.
and start organizing.
Good point.
But as they put it, it was tons of conversations. They had a tent set up by the bus stop, so everyone who used the bus to go to the
Ah,
warehouse walked by them, and they
that's
used that
smart.
as a base, as an office, an
Mm-hmm.
outdoor office where they could have. They said they had a cookout every month, or some event, a picnic,
Nice.
and of course they would have tons of amenities there to give to people as they went home or were coming in. They even said they had pot and
Oh, all right.
yeah, to make it through the day. And this is how they built. They weren't protecting workers; they were offering solidarity through mutual aid, and of course that's how they got a majority of people. Like all of the union busting propaganda and stuff was made worthless
Yeah.
against the benefits that the union was already giving them. And now the offer is basically now everything that you were getting from us, we're gonna have Amazon, we're gonna have Bezos pay for it. So filling in the gaps of knowledge. So
Interesting.
it's like I just kind of laid out how a lot of this is sort of why isn't this done by more organizations? And
Right.
so it's kind of left to organize not based on place or place of residence, but well, as many leftists have pointed out that I've read over and over on my show, that it's the workplace that you organize.
Mm-hmm.
And because people can move around, but maybe they stay at the same workplace. And the goal is to keep people at the same workplace. But of course, the same argument could go that if you organize tenants, they do not have to constantly move about,
Nearly as much. Yeah.
or move or find a cheaper place
Uh-huh.
if we get rents low or
Yeah.
stabilized.
Or stabilized.
So it becomes a chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
Always becomes some
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
comes first.
Right.
And I like Crime Think's motto, the best, how do you change everything? Start anywhere. How do you change
Okay.
anything? Start everywhere. Or do anything.
Do anything. Yeah.
Do I have it? To change everything, start anywhere.
Okay.
I have it behind. I have it. I have a postcard.
Nice.
No, right over my shoulder there.
Gotcha.
Okay. Much of the final checking can be done by telephone, of course. If you have telephone numbers. I went over that last time. If the captains can complete their list of apartment dwellers from mailboxes, they can then go home and get the detailed information by telephoning each apartment. Also, in those cases where it is thought that not all residents of a home are recorded on cards, information about them can be gotten by phone. One very important, if they answer their phone, if you leave a message and they call back, I mean, all of this is like you're going to just get 10 hits out of 100.
Right.
And
Well,
if the 100 is the precinct, then you're only getting 10 hits, but I guess you organize those 10 people.
yeah.
But, maybe 10's enough sometimes to win an election in a completely apathetic
For sure.
area.
Yeah. Or a very contentious one. Sure.
Yeah. I forgot the podcast, but it was about conspiracy theories. And there was this quote that the most powerful conspiracy in the world is just you and your comrades.
Ah, okay.
You have to think about it. But
Yeah.
basically, when you think about powerful cabals, you basically think about a small group
Small group of
that
people that are
meet
committed to doing what
privately
they're doing.
and committed to doing something.
Yeah.
Couldn't you and the lads be that? You
You
just have
certainly
to
could.
say we just need a goal.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Too many friend groups are just like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this. What are you doing? I'm doing that.
Mhm.
But if they all agree on one thing, then they're a committee, and the committee just won a union at Amazon. Let's see. One very important kind of voter to be located among the unregistered is the first voter. These are chiefly young people who have just turned 21. Well, these days it would be 18. Can you imagine voting age being 21?
Ugh.
When it was changed to 18, that was the status quo reaction to doing that was Logan's Run. Like the story of Logan's Run.
We're gonna sacrifice all the old people. That was the reaction. If we allow younger people to vote, is that where that was going?
The most extreme one, yes.
What?
Well,
I'm sure even at that point, most
I want to make it clear that
would have been older.
The actual I've read the novel Logan's Run, which differs from the movie significantly.
I've only seen the movie, so I guess that's where I'm coming from.
The novel is better. It doesn't take long to read.
It usually is, but yeah,
it doesn't take long to read at all. It's pretty short.
Sure.
But like most dystopian novels, future things, is that what happened was so young people could vote, and there were more young people than old people. So young people voted themselves into power, and basically, under the 60s, the motto, don't trust anyone over 30.
Over 30, yeah.
Yeah, so if you take that to its logical conclusion, you get a society that kills anyone over 30. But that's not I don't think that's what I don't think the society doesn't actually do that, though.
No one seems to know what happens in the society. At least in the movie version, nobody knows what's happening to people once they get past 30. They're just gone, and it's out of their mind.
Right. That, and there's no carousel in the novel, by the way, which is pretty odd. But they actually they actually go to something that's more akin to the Soylent Green euthanasia chamber. But anyway, and the thing about Logan's Run is that actually, it is a worldwide society that, the chase is actually happening across the whole world, not just there's dome cities. It's actually not in dome cities. It's just the world.
Just everything's like that, huh? Interesting.
It's weird. So the escaping the society is actually about going to space. It ends with them going to space.
Interesting. But that's still, so what a bizarre worry to have, because it's not as though 18-year-olds have the financial capital usually to run for office or to put each other up for office, and that's how our democracy works. It's a bourgeois democracy.
Well, that's not. But that's not the ideology, Zach. The idea, the idealism of liberal democracy is that the people who vote are the people in power, and if there's these 18 to 25-year-olds that outnumber the over 50s, which at the time was the case. It would lead to, and if the young people are all hippies, then we'll have a hippie-ruled society, and everything will go crazy.
It's so funny how things didn't go that way.
But then, of course, you have the other side of it that says that veterans will, not through democracy though, but that as a counter to the young people, that the veterans will take control of society, and you get Starship Troopers. Kind of like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where all of the literature is in the same continuum. So the third thing, let's see. Okay, so first voters, right? The efficient block captain is especially alert in finding all absentees, people who will be away from home on business, invalids, and those in the armed forces, and then offers to make arrangements to get the necessary registration forms and follow up. This is something essential to electioneering even today, is getting the absentee voters, because those are going to be the older folks. Those are going to be the reliable votes. Or you get them the absentee ballot, and then you fill it out for them. Which is sort of why there is this super weird reaction to total mail-in voting here in New York, even among Democrats, mostly established Democrats.
Really, it's mostly Democrats there.
It's an opening for corruption there was a concern. It was concern trolling, but it was a concern over well, I guess it wasn't the same flavor as the right wing conspiracy of like,
Mm-hmm.
just people making fake ballots,
Right.
but it was more about an extension of a corrupt thing that already was done, which was the filling out of absentee ballots for people who aren't actually going on vacation, but just getting them to be absentee ballots. So you fill them out for them. So it's a guaranteed vote.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing the precinct leader does is to explain to the block captains that a party's precinct registration drive is aimed solely at locating the unregistered and persuading them to register. The unregistered will fall into three categories: the saints, the salvageables, and the sinners. This was mentioned last time.
Interesting.
The saints are in the precinct's leader's party. Salvageables are so-called independents.
On the
I like
fence,
that
yeah.
phrasing because I call them so-called as well. And those weak in party loyalty. They can be swayed by a good leader. The sinners are on the
Sure
wrong
they can.
side. The primary purpose of either party is to get the saints and salvageables registered. The sinners are left to the opposition to find. So first, I guess it's assuming you talk to them about what party they
Where they
identify
stand,
with
yeah.
first. And then if they don't identify as, let's say, Green or Democrat,
Mhm.
you actually just say good day and leave, which seems really awkward to me. Really awkward. And obviously, if you are, say, the Acorn, organization, or any kind of nonprofit that just does voter reg, you're just going to register people.
Right.
And in fact, it's over in the modern era that we made voter registration this almost apolitical, nonpartisan affair. Something that you do for the good of it, because more
Right.
people voting is just better somehow.
It's supposed to be good for the democracy, sure. Yeah.
It's good for the but it's a partisan view of that more people voting is good.
That is true.
Forgotten.
The people
And
in power don't want more
I
people
guess
voting.
it was such a surprise that Acorn was defunded as it was, based on because they were funded by a billionaire, the Soros empire.
Oh, it was those Soros bucks, huh?
And which made them a target for, it was one of Glenn Beck's victories of like drawing attention to these groups that just register people Democrat. Like, no, they're working class, so they register Democrat. What else have they registered? Republican?
Yeah. Yeah, that was man. Wasn't that
more like
James O'Keefe's? Wasn't that James O'Keefe's first big score?
It was,
so to speak.
It was his first score, and it surprises me he's had others. But
I know he's been shown to be alive every single time.
Apparently, there's some, I'm not gonna call them lefties, but other people online who actually take Project Veritas as this legitimate thing now. It like where 10 years ago they wouldn't have, but now they do, or something.
Why?
Or because they never heard of it before, or something, which I don't know. Impossible.
Do like a 30-second Google search, like.
I don't know.
That's bizarre.
Let's see. Okay. The Saints probably will be interested in registering. I mean, if they are, then why aren't they registered already? But
true.
They'll be interested in some form of permanent registration, and voters are carried on the books as long as they vote regularly. Where the vote provides that each voter must register personally for every election, of course, the captain's job is bigger. He has to get all of his saints and salvageables registered every year. Wow.
That's a
I
task.
wonder when that stopped happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it still happens. The fourth thing the leader does is to explain to the precinct workers that the primary job is getting these saints and salvageables to actually go to the precinct registration place and register. So it's like good practice for election day. When it gets to election day, it's basically the same operation. It's interesting that you'd almost have to do it twice.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, you can just have the paper form with you and have them fill it out, and then you turn in those forms to the Board of Elections yourself. This whole thing about like you have to have them do it Why would they have to go to the office? Couldn't
what does that
anyone do
matter?
it if
Couldn't
it's
anyone
a
drop
form?
it in the
It's like
mailbox or whatever?
they have to sign in person with the notary there or something. That's how much? I mean, that's probably what the old folks are thinking about like when they're thinking about how voting is so irregular and insecure these days.
Right.
It's that people don't have to jump through all the hoops they did when they were young, and it's just unfair, or something like that. Or it must be wrong now because it's not like it was before.
Does New York have same-day registration? Minnesota does.
I believe it does now, or it's going to.
That's good.
I know
that's pretty crucial too.
Actually, I think that's on the table. Like that's the next step. But I think we're in the reform package that was passed 2 years ago. I think it was just moving registration to a month before.
Okay.
But now I think it's a week before.
Maybe
I have to check.
Step in the right direction, at least.
I have to check. Maybe it was done and it is same day now, but I haven't. No one's mentioned it as something like we can register people the same day. Because get out the vote efforts are always just so haperdash. The fourth thing the leader does is to explain to the. Get that. At this meeting, the precinct leader also explains the basic information on where and when to register, voting qualifications such as age. I'm going to stop there. Some precinct leaders find it worthwhile at this meeting not only to explain the jobs to be done, but to try to train the workers on how to do it. Try do it. Maybe you should. Practice telephone calls are made on the spot, each worker making one to get the feel of it. Some canvassing situations where a block captain will meet people face-to-face are acted out so that the captains will have some actual practice before making their first real call. One worker acts as a voter, the other acts as a role of the block captain making the call. The dialogue might go like this. It's amazing how little of this actually I see in action. But at the same time, I guess I do, but I didn't do it. How do you do? I'm Joe Doe. I live over on Sycamore Avenue, and I'm working with the blank precinct committee. We're interested in seeing that everyone eligible to vote can. Are you folks registered? Oh, yes, we're registered. There are 2 of you, aren't there? James and Mary? Well, there's also my daughter, Jane. She reached 21 and can vote now. Can she? She certainly can. Does she know where to register? She'll have to go to the courthouse, won't she? The person acting the role of the block captain goes on to explain just how to get Jane registered. The device of having precinct workers. Now, the cool thing about New York, at least recently, I don't know how far back this goes, but it was figured out that the form does not need to be filled out by the person. It just has to be information on the form, and you can take that down over the phone or whatever, and that the form doesn't have to actually be the Board of Elections form. It just has to be the information that would go on the form.
Oh, interesting.
And so they made up this quarter flyer-sized version of the voter registration. And I think it was two-sided. Maybe it wasn't. But maybe it was. I think it was. It was the name and address and contact was on one side, and then the voter list of parties and so on was on the other. And so you could basically just hand these out to people as well as just fill it out and then have the pile in your pocket. So that was really, it's really convenient to have that. Otherwise, the voter reg forms are like legal sized, and it's almost on purpose that they don't fit on any clipboard unless you have a legal clipboard. And good precinct organizations close their meetings with an hour of socializing and food. This is a must for all meetings
of any kind.
So, manning a registration place. There are 2 kinds of personnel in the registration place: official registrars and party watchers or checkers. Turning people out. So this is talking about registering people like as an event. Let's see. Many voters show about the same interest in registering and voting that apples show in being picked. They have to be called, talked to, and led to the polls one by one.
Oh, is that like how apple picking works?
Huh?
Is that how apple picking works? You have to coax each individual apple out of the tree.
You have to pull. You have to pull. You have to twist and pull. Twist and pull. Twist and pull. Like apples, they also bruise easily and must be handled with care.
Oh wow.
Having briefed the precinct workers and manned the registration place, the leader then gets his voters out to be registered. Generally, this is a three-step process. Reminder mailing. This is why it takes so much money, because not only would you have to put out like mailings for election day,
Right.
but also for registration. But it is, in fact, something that like you have so many people who but don't because they're not registered. Many are not registered. It is really easy to register now. It's easier than ever, but apathy and apoliticism keeps people from being motivated to do it.
Yep.
And obviously, the state of national or politics on TV, and that's what people see. That's how people deal, like think about it. Obviously, is not encouraging, and so to change people's minds, at least on the local level, is to organize your committee and then do stuff that matters, as X party, as a Green Party, or socialists, as socialists. Then, when you go around to register people to vote for you, the socialists, then they'll be motivated that way. Like, have you heard what we're doing? Here's what we're doing. So it's almost like you prep before even asking for registrations, before you ask for votes. You actually just get out newsletters and media telling people what you do and what you've done. And that could be union organizing. So anyone who's pro-labor or a laborer will then identify. And all the while, I would keep messaging focused on solidarity rather than like protecting your own neck, because it's what changes. It's how the winds change so fast between people being on your side and then like, oh, they didn't protect me, or I want more protection from police. We can't defund the police. We need more protection. We need to protect ourselves. I have no solidarity with these criminals, these other people, these poor people. People that frighten me. So,
Yeah.
and obviously keeping registration lists updated, which is a near it's a very hard task in a big, especially when it's a big area. But let's say it's a small area, and then it's just about pinning down who sticks around, who are the people, and then like if these houses are rented out and there's high turnover, it's like you just forget it. You just like forget about it. I'll focus on these other houses with people who have lived there for at least a few years, or try to work on them. Focus. Those are the salvageables. The people in here, even if they're good people, they could be potential socialists, or they are socialists. If they're going to move next year, it's worthless. Which is disappointing, because I've met people who I'm like, these are our comrades who I will want to ask them for help. And then the next time when it's like it come times around for me to ask them to help, and I find that they're a state away now, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because of a better job, or
Yeah.
just look or certain work.
Yeah. I've
The
done
field
that
they're
too.
in, which happened with someone who was with Food Not Bombs, and she was doing work in a nonprofit sector, AIDS education, and she's from Hartford, so like maybe it was her intention to move back eventually, but or maybe she was from Connecticut, I forget now. But she basically took a better job in Hartford, so she's like not in New York anymore. I think it was also partner related, but maybe her partner was in Massachusetts. Now I forget. But the point was, we lost a good Food Not Bombs member, and she was pretty cool.
It sucks.
Right, and so it's because it's not just the normies that move around and stuff, because everyone's potential radical now. Now it's just like
There's enough pressure on
we gotta go
workers.
big and organize nationally, which is what the Bernie campaign was all about, trying to mobilize and organize people on a national level, because we're also moving around. We can't do it locally.
Yeah.
But without that local ground game, we couldn't win.
Yeah.
So it's another paradox, another contradiction.
Yeah, that's where I see maybe more potential with groups like the IWW, which doesn't matter where you live. They will historically have come from state to state to help each other out. in terms of strikes and walkouts and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I think national presidential election is just too big for the
oh yeah, yeah, I'm just
development of the left as it is now.
yeah, yeah.
And what something
I'm just thinking more like
yeah,
just
I've
building class solidarity and worker
exactly. Well, that's what
movements.
I mean.
Yeah,
Building left solidarity, which is what
right,
has been totally lacking over our lifetimes.
right.
And because it's like we've been infected by reactionism in so many ways. Occupy had its share of it, and it
Hmm.
kind of comes about in our certain movements in the form of turfs and other type of um, the
Yes,
Moppins,
indeed.
the Moppin types,
Yeah, yeah.
or look at what happened to Peter Coffin, someone who seemed to have lots of solidarity for fellow leftists, and then totally
Hmm.
just reversed.
Oh
Um, and
yeah.
it can happen to you too. But
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if I got cynical enough, then sure.
I think that's what happened because all of his
Yeah.
videos were all about how cynical can you get about things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about not only online cultures but just how it affects the real world too. A well briefed poll. Let's see. I'm skipping. So okay, I'm on the page election day, and it's all just about having advanced planning, having designated election officials. Let's see if there's getting out the vote, have vote checkers, have people at the polling places to make sure shenanigans aren't happening. But again, you need teams of dozens of people to do this, or if it's just the one election district, at least a few.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's people can do multiple jobs, but it'll just take your whole day and you'll be exhausted. And then
Right.
even
Yeah.
I'm just too lazy.
Right. Well, burnout's a reality as well. You don't
Yeah,
want
I
the most
want I want
committed
to
people
live
to end up being burnt
I
out.
want to live my goals of working, a max of 5 hours a day.
There you go. That's the noble goal.
So let's see, having folders or an Excel doc, who has voted, who hasn't voted, when you do outreach the day of, telephoning, get out the vote, go door to door even if necessary, but that's when you have enough people.
Right.
Um, Poll watchers, obviously. So yeah, going through all of that, watching the count, which Republicans seem to have pretty down, but whatever. Transportation sitters, automobile driver volunteers are on hand, touch with headquarters to do basically drive-ins. I did some of this when I was helping with a campaign. I hated it. Um, I mean, I just hate driving, but even worse, like just driving a few people.
I love driving.
Um,
Had
the
many
word
driving
babysitters are
jobs.
just as the word implies. Those given this assignment are carefully chosen. Assignments for both transportation and babysitting usually are made up well in advance. Wait, let me explain the transportation sitters. So, a crew of well instructed, careful drivers are assembled. The precinct is divided into sections and assignments made so prompt service is assured voters who require it. So, just like running people from their home to the polling place, which, you know, could be just a few blocks, but
I mean,
uh,
if it brings out a few more people, it might
yeah,
be worth it. Do you think it'd be
it,
worth
it,
it
it
to have
absolutely
like
is, as far as the whole every vote counts thing. But
right?
I just hate adding more driving congestion to a neighborhood.
Sure, sure.
And
What
and
if you
also,
had just like an old school bus or something like that, and you painted on the side, free rides to the poll or something like that, and then you came up with a route for each precinct, and just had it, circulate the neighborhood.
yeah, it's
Um,
like you park on the corner and then you
hmm.
basically door knock the block,
There you go.
which could take half an hour, but um, that wouldn't be speedy service. Though it's like, but until you find somebody who's home and hasn't voted yet,
Hmm.
then you grab them and put them in the van.
Or make
But
like a party of it. How about that? Like have some loud music playing, have lights and flashing and whatnot. I mean, I guess you don't want to scare people off or anything, but just make it look enticing, and so like people look out their window. Oh, what's going by? Oh, the voting bus. Let's get on that.
blast some music, of course.
Yeah.
Like I always find it interesting. I always want to have the idea of doing like from the Blues Brothers, and just
Yeah,
have a car with a speaker and just drive around town going like, vote Howie Hawkins,
there
vote
you
Howie
go.
Hawkins,
That's the
Green
real
New
old
Deal
school. Yeah.
for green, demand better, vote Green Party. And
Hmm.
nobody ever takes me up on this idea.
That
I don't
sounds
know
like a
why.
blast to me. I would love doing that sort of thing.
They don't want to do it. They don't want to volunteer their car or something. But obviously, you can just paint a car, whatever.
Sure.
Um, let's see. Watching the, but okay. I wanted to get to the page where it lists the type of thing of the fraud to watch out for.
Hmm.
Spoiling ballots. Usually, paper ballots are invalidated if torn, disfigured, or marked extraneously. Thus, a dishonest election official can nullify a hostile paper ballot by tearing it slightly or marking it with graphite concealed beneath a fingernail.
What? Those tricky 1950s organizers.
This is where it's good that the ballots go into a machine and be
Yes,
scanned on the spot, because
that's
it
true.
some of this stuff gets cut out of the thing. But
You
that's
take
if it's a paper ballot. Now, of course, the
right.
paper ballot is supposed to be the most secure, the most paper. It's a
Supposed
paperwork.
to be.
But of course, I don't know what the rules are now for like spoiled ballots. If there's a mark or it's
Hmm.
torn, like, but it's just these rules exist to exclude people. Trickery by advice. Under the guise of offering guidance to the blind, illiterate, or handicapped, some dishonest election officials misled the handicapped and the
Oh,
gullible into voting the way the official wants. An
oh
alert
my.
poll watcher can prevent this.
That's where things like braille ballots and
Hmm. I
or
mean, I
the
did this.
headphones. I think I've seen that too. Especially with electronic ones, you can put the headphones in and have it read it to you
Mhm.
like a screen reader.
What if the box is taken away? The box of ballots or the
Oh,
box of
you're
white
talking about like
noise?
the collection box for ballots? Is that what you're asking? Because that is something that happened a lot. That was real voter fraud that happened in California, putting up fake.
Boxes?
I think it was registration boxes, not ballot boxes.
Oh.
But yeah,
Oh yeah, and then they went and it's like, oh, you're not actually registered.
that's right.
I mean, it's what Amazon did at one of their they
That's
changed
right
the
in
boxes where
Bessemer.
they put a
Yep.
fake box and they didn't take where it's like put your ballots in here, official,
But they worked with
and
the
then they
postal service and they made them
yeah
move the ballot box to a place
yeah
where they could monitor it with like cameras and whatnot.
yeah
It's
right
like,
right
jeez.
that was it
Talk
okay
about
use
intimidation.
yeah. So an alert poll watcher can prevent it. Okay, so chain voting. So here's something that truly blasts from the past. A blank ballot is taken outside the polls by a dishonest voter who how could they do this? Um
Good
anyway,
question.
they deposit a blank piece of paper who deposits a blank piece of paper which looks like a ballot. So they put a fake ballot in the
So they go
box.
into the
They
box, they
take
take
the
a
actual
blank piece of
ballot with
paper.
them. The ballot is marked outside by the operator of the chain and given to a controlled voter who conceals it in his pocket. In the voting booth, he transfers the blank ballot to his pocket, presents the previously marked ballot for deposit, and carries out the blank ballot to the operator, who then marks it and starts the chain over again. Use of this fraud ensures the operator that the vote is being cast the right way, usually for a nominal sum
That's the
paid
connection.
by the voters.
See, but
Um,
I mean, today, how do you even prevent that sort of thing? Every phone has a camera. How do you prevent, pay for votes sort of
taking a
scenarios?
picture of the ballot.
You're taking a
Um,
picture of your ballot, yeah. I mean, I know it's illegal, but is anyone actually prosecuted for that, for one? And if you're just
is it
sending it
even
to a
done?
right, right, um, that
It's
that
like
as well.
voting doesn't matter enough to do these things anymore, or they're
I mean,
being
when it
done
comes
and
down to it, that's probably true.
it's
That's probably
being
the
done and
the
it's
greatest truth.
completely invisible.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, do we have a guard at my polling place? There's usually someone at the door, but
Yeah.
like, and there's not really a lot of room. Like our voting area, it's like you're not in an enclosed space.
It's the same
like
with us
other
too.
places would have it.
There's
You
no
just
there's no
have
curtain or
you just
anything.
have a
It
little
just
blinder and like that's on stand, so it's like
exactly.
your
That's what we
pockets
have
are
too.
visible, and maybe
Right.
that's the prevention of doing this.
That's probably true. That's
But
probably
I've
the
never
truth.
heard of this before.
But still,
So
every
the other one
election,
is
you,
called yeah. So
I was
here's
just
one that may be more familiar.
go ahead.
Crowding the polls, contriving to line up stooges at the polls at the end of the day, and ordering each to remain in the voting booth the maximum permissible time is sometimes practiced to dissuade latecomers, honest voters, from waiting in line for their chance to vote. This can be countered by getting voters out earlier and by calling time on voters who stay too long in the booth. There are many other ways of swinging a precinct, and all of them are given ample supply by careful poll watchers. The good precinct leader encourages his party's representatives to follow his advice. Be polite but firm. Don't allow yourself to be browbeaten by anyone. You have rights. Under the law, assert them courteously. And then another page about how this is your year-long round work, that a good precinct leader builds a reputation for who does build a reputation for winning elections. Don't get that way with pre-election activities of a crash nature. The best precinct leaders are those who are around their home neighborhoods a great deal. They are people who know the neighbors and see them often enough so that they have a pretty good idea of what they are thinking and doing. The leader's aim is to win their confidence through friendliness, integrity, and service. Now, of course, first, your neighborhood actually has to be livable,
Yeah.
and mine is not so. It's kind of ghetto. There's not a lot of, well, there are public spaces I could literally hang out in, but I
Mhm.
basically have to sit my ass down all day like I'm a underclass person and basically say hi to everyone who passes by
Sure.
and say like, "Oh, do you live around here? Who are you?" And maybe have some stuff that obviously show that like I'm doing something.
Mhm.
But it's just like it's also incredibly boring to just sit around and just wait to talk to people. But that
Mhm.
is the hard work of organizing,
Sure.
I would say. Or I go to the splash pad, and when the families are there, just talk to everyone there.
Mhm.
Um, that would be the easiest thing because that would be just like go in, walk there, talk to everyone, just say hey. It's like the same thing I would be doing if I was canvassing. Just say like, "Hey, I'm here." But again, I want something in my hands. I want to be petitioning. I want to be have a lit or something like that. But just like it's awkward just to go around to the park just to hand out lit. But I've done it.
Sure.
But just once in 2016 when I really just didn't have the time or opportunities to do some Jill Stein boosting. I just went to the main park where everyone who lives around it is some kind of progressive person mostly, and just started handing out Jill Lit.
There
And
you
I
go.
had some conversations too, um, at least with two people who were hanging out at a picnic table. Um,
Nice.
but one of them worked for one of the assembly offices, and they were
Hmm.
like, not happening.
Oh. Oh.
Or she
Some more
was,
heated
but like
conversation.
she was spoken for, like she couldn't
Right.
do, and she just the
She's
person
not
who
going to
was
get
open
involved.
minded was actually like this. He was a union guy, but he was anti-immigrant,
Oh.
and I talked about the green platform and
Hmm.
how like what did I do? I talked about it in a way that a Democrat never could, like in addressing his issues, particularly maybe talking about money and something like that. I just got around the Republican Democrat binaries, whatever,
Yeah.
by being able to talk about the larger structural issues where he could go like, "Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense."
Right. Yeah. Stuff Democrats will never touch.
Um, okay, gotta be a good listener. Let other fellows talk. The information he gains about the voters become valuable. I mean, it's really just having the courage or the practice to just be able to ask people questions and get them talking. Um, and don't do the talking yourself, except to basically say like, I don't know. I try to split the difference by asking them a question, having them talk until they're like said as much as they're going to, and then respond. and either relate what they said to something about the green platform or something we were doing. But the awkward part comes in that if we're not doing anything yet, it's kind of like I feel
Yeah.
like they're doing all this stuff and I'm doing shit. Or like I'm
Hmm.
doing this is what I'm doing. I'm talking to people to collect their but this is why it's good to have some other campaign already going on. Like if it's
For
for
sure.
single payer healthcare, even if it's not like a really active campaign, just have like the sheet of like, here's something about single payer. I have a petition, and also just collecting your healthcare stories. Obviously, you've been wronged by our healthcare system.
Hmm.
How?
Right.
And here's how the single payer bill would address it. Would you sign for it? Would you
There you
sign
go.
this petition for it? Okay. Also, this is how you build your list, as it's called. Our version of this in the Green Party was to use the single payer campaign to build our lists. Meaning, when you go out and collect information, you're saying like, okay, we want to collect you. You're doing it for single payer, but you're also using that list to then reach out to them for the Green Party, which seemed a little unfair to me. But I think if you're talking to them with a big Green Party button, and also say,
Yeah.
I'm doing this with the Green Party,
Hmm.
and when you ask for their information, say like, do you mind if we reach out to you for this
Yeah.
campaign and other
Yeah.
stuff? It's just a matter
Be
of
upfront.
having their contact info.
For
But
sure.
it's just more to say. The more you have to say, the less they're talking, and sometimes that's not handling with care.
For sure.
But you got to pick that apple, I guess. People are apples.
That's right. Don't bruise it. Yep.
What's the kind of fruit that just falls off on its own?
What is a fruit that just falls? I mean, apples tend to fall on their own in a
Well,
strong wind,
exactly. They have to be ripe
but
enough, though. They have to be
right,
ripe
right, right.
first. So the
Uh huh.
goal is to ripen the fruit.
Uh huh.
What ripens fruit? One successful precinct leader is, but otherwise it rots on the vine.
Brought some. Yeah, can't have that.
Okay, almost done with this. Keeping aides interested. Obviously, just keep
Pairs,
your
sure.
morale up. Have parties. Let's see. I'm talking about election time. A good precinct leader is in the forefront in stimulating community projects of all kinds, which is also what I've been mentioning. You need to be doing something that isn't just elections. He helps with community chest and other drives in his neighborhood, not only because he is a good citizen, but because it enables him to contact voters in the role of a good citizen, as well as a partisan seeking votes. He is known and respected by local authorities and can enlist their aid when the neighbors need help with around home problems, which are like the favors of calling up general services and getting a branch trimmed. Like,
Hmm.
this tree is leaning on my property. Can you get it
Yeah, yeah.
trimmed? He is well informed on campaign issues at election time, knows the candidates personally, and can discuss their qualifications. Can be a spokesperson. One astute precinct leader in New York State puts out a mimeographed inside politics letter to all the voters in his precinct every few months. It carries brief reports of political events that may have been covered in the newspaper but overlooked by most people. This chatty publication gives the voters a feel of the political developments. It benefits accruing to the political leader include a reputation for being a well-informed person, one whose advice can be safely sought and accepted at election time. In 1958, this leader carried his precinct for Rockefeller with a larger vote than the record turnout Eisenhower received in 56. Summed up, the successful precinct committeeman is busy every day of the year, a personable, energetic, helpful neighbor and citizen. But when do I play video games? Um, but yes,
After
it's like
after
always
election. Yeah.
busy, never stopping. I
Uh huh.
I don't understand how anyone did in the past, and I actually don't really understand how people do it now. Um, Obviously, there's the motivation of like I have to as part of my survival
Mm-hmm.
when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to say fundraising or whatever. Um, but for the long haul, but yeah, even with all the motivation of climate change and all the necessary action, maybe it's because I'm still like we're all still trained to like I got to focus on my duties, my chores, my job, and then with
Mm-hmm.
the time left over, like the 8 hours on the weekend, do some of it with you. As I said, I
Mm-hmm.
spent some of it doing the tool library.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I had left over. I could spend this time doing stuff in this book, and I do have that in mind someday. When is that
Absolutely.
day going to become? And that's something that brings me some anxiety as I was thinking about it this morning. Because it's like I feel like I have to have everything else done and covered, and like then I can just do this,
Just focus
just
on the
build Green Party
organizing.
stuff. And but that was a goal I put out like a decade ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still like not happening. And it's like I'm waiting for the wheels of history to turn, where suddenly there's 10 people ready
Yeah.
to step up.
Oh, I know what that's like. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're all feeling it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So keeping ourselves interested, which is again is something I have to keep myself interested sometimes in doing Green Party
Absolutely.
work, and that's something I'm going to hit a wall with when it comes to petitioning in about a month's time.
Yeah.
But I also have my own drama with my
Mm.
family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the precinct
It's hard
leader.
to.
So and then the last bit here in this chapter is just about like how you're being a precinct leader because you want to get higher up in the leadership. Um, I think this is a result of the hierarchical nature of organizations.
Mm.
And if you have a
Mm-hmm.
horizontal one, the precinct leaders are like the delegates in the organization. They are governing it. They don't need to be higher up to have a say in policy, platform, or whatever. I mean, usually precinct captains or whatever, or not the captains, but the precinct leaders
Mm-hmm.
are delegates for the state party, whatever.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so they would have a say or something. But obviously, to be higher up in the leadership, whatever. But the thing about rotating leadership is that you have your coordinating committee. This will be made up of people who do precinct work. Um, but again, you can't do everything. So if you're not doing precinct work, you're doing the state committee work. And if you're not doing the state committee work, you're doing the national work. But there are people I know, like Gloria Matera, another co-chair of the Green Party in New York. She also does a lot of national work, national Greens. So it's like I don't know how they do it, but obviously this is their job, so to speak, or it's half of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. I'm just reading this through. I haven't actually gone through it all.
Sure. No problem.
At the core of all the votes he gets in any election are in the individuals he has brought together as his volunteer precinct workers. A calculation of the sure votes he can command is as a result of whipping together a tight, loyal organization might run this way. 2 election officials he had a hand in selecting, their wives, grown children, parents, at least 6 votes. 3 poll watchers and challengers who also have family votes, so 10 more. 4 vote checkers and their families, at least another 12 votes. And this is assuming that families vote together,
Yeah. Yeah. Assuming
which isn't really the case anymore unless we're talking about some collectives sharing a
Well, yeah.
house.
I mean, if what they say about the Zoomers is true, they're the most progressive generation in quite some time. So.
So, yeah. But anyway, moving on. We're talking about households, not always
Mm-hmm.
families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, 3 telephone headquarters workers, their families, at least another 10 votes. Drivers, sitters, block captains, and their families, another 20. So, a total of a possible 58 votes. Add the vote of the precinct leader himself and their family, maybe it would go up to 65. With this number of votes as a base, he can generally carry the precinct in a primary election,
Mm-hmm.
which is meaning like once you have your core, you can basically influence enough people to win
Right.
your little pocket.
Yeah.
And if you do this, if you repeat this across the city with one person in each precinct, you will carry the day.
Carry the day. Yeah.
Which is something that I'm not even sure democratic machines can do anymore.
Really?
Though I think maybe in practice they do. Maybe not as with many as people because they don't have. No, actually, you know what? The more I think about it, the more I think I do because it just comes in the form of like the poll workers. That's
Oh.
like 8 to 10 older women who do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're all black, but regardless,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all basically solid. They're on the Democratic plantation type people.
Oh, okay.
But again, it's because it's just what they've done their whole lives.
Yeah.
And I am dissuaded from being a poll worker in my area, like from getting a start, because I'd be doing it with them, and I hate listening to them for the time it takes me to vote.
Really?
It's just
it's that much
gap.
indoctrination, or
Well, a little of that, the culture gap. And I'm not just talking about black and white, but also just all sorts of cultural differences. And also that they're all like church ladies too. And that's probably like the way just the way they talk about everything, it all makes me it's all cringe to me. And I know there's some polling places where I'd probably have a better time. So it's just a matter of saying not in my award. Or just not my polling place, maybe the other one. But I wonder if it's the same. And that's kind of the block that any council person has in my ward, that they have those election workers and all these others who are loyal Dems. And if there's no primary, which there usually isn't, but if there is, it's usually the established person who has all of these loyal Dems voting for them already because they had to earn their votes once or twice, and they'll have them
and then it just carries on
someone else
until a new generation comes in. Yeah.
Or it has to be someone like the new person, the challenger has to earn their vote, which means they have to do all the work. The incumbent doesn't have to do barely any work except to get out the vote work. And the whole like, hey, how you doing? I'm running again, which is literally what she does. Because I could ask her what she's working on and what her plans are, and she has no good answers for that. Because our council is so weak, it's like they barely need to do anything or should do anything.
Really, they're just like a
all very
rubber stamp committee.
Well, it's almost it's half that, and the other half are like defeatist, or a third is a rubber stamp, a third are defeatist, like don't rock the boat types, or just let's get along types. Oh, we want to be called collaborative government is good government. And to get along with the third that are rubber stamp means they have to be status quo like. Right, and then there's a third that are more mixing it up, more progressive, or at least they're there to do something. And but they're always going to be outvoted. So
yeah, can't get enough of a coalition going.
Yeah, they can probably get the collaborators to like flip sometimes, but if it goes against the wishes of the mayor, if it goes against the wishes of real estate, I mean, I'm surprised when they can vote for, say, a rent control study committee, but that's just to study rent control, not to do it. When it comes to doing something, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah,
like when it came to banning tear gas in the city of Albany, there were 4 abstentions, including my council person.
Abstention. Wow, don't even have a backbone to stand behind a vote.
Couldn't vote yes or no. Yeah.
Wow.
Because saying yes to the ban would mean going against the mayor and the police. Very dangerous in this town.
Yeah, in many cities, yeah.
And saying no would obviously put you in the doghouse with not only activists but maybe even the general neighborhood. Especially since it wasn't our ward, but it was the wards around us who got tear gassed. And I mean that literally. It wasn't just protesters that got tear gassed. It was done in a residential neighborhood, so it went into the houses.
Oh wow!
And it was only used.
And they still can't vote against it. Jeez.
Last year, yeah, it was only done. Well, not last year, but the year before that, 2020. It was never used before in Albany ever. So much so that the tear gas that the police department had was like expired. Like
Yeah, I was gonna
it was
say.
old.
Oh,
And the rubber bullets had like some of them had disintegrated, like they weren't
oh
like the rubber had
no.
degraded.
So they're
Oh
impacting
yeah.
harder then. Oh, jeez. But
Oh, like literally.
speaking of rent control, we just got rent control in St. Paul. It goes into effect next month, and
Holy
it's funny the
shit.
way we just signed our new lease for the next year, and the way the landlords phrased it, they're like, "Well, as you may know, St. Paul has implemented rent control, which means we have to raise rent 3% every year because that was the deal is you can only raise it
You
three
can
percent."
only raise it 3%,
But the way
which
they
means
phrased
they
it, they were like, "Well,
have to
it's
raise
just
it.
we gotta raise it 3% every year." So like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
To at least match inflation, because inflation is
right,
6%, so 3% each year.
yeah. Well, what doesn't tend to go up 3% every
Yeah.
year is working class wages, but
Wages, yes.
that's a side issue. But at least we got something though. So
Unless we tie minimum wage to a 3% increase every year,
which would be amazing.
which is
But
something that is never on the table somehow. You can
well, we
never
can't
tie
even
minimum
get to
wage to.
15 for the past what 10, 15 years now. It's been at
Nationally speaking, in
7
some
whatever.
areas, yes. In New York,
Yeah. Like
we're about there.
Minneapolis has a
Um,
$15 minimum, and
Not statewide though, but at least New York City, and it's
yeah.
going to go higher in New York City because obviously 15 is still crap.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't even get
But
half an
it's
apartment for 15 in New York City. Like, jeez.
yeah. Well, that's the point. You share it with someone.
You'd have to share it with like a, I don't
Pack
know.
them in. But
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Maximum.
I mean, it's prices are going up everywhere. It's obviously a kind of 2005 situation right now. So we're just kind of waiting
I
for
feel
that
that.
crash,
Oh
but
man, that the
it
housing
doesn't fix the
prices.
problem. Because obviously, when I was like a teenager and in the aughts, I was thinking, oh, we got once there's a crash, it will fix. It will fix this problem or something.
Yeah,
Of course, it
yeah.
didn't.
No, of
But
course
you had a
not.
lot of books and people saying it should have,
Uh
or
huh.
saying
Uh huh.
that now that bubble crashed the economy, we need to fix housing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only a decade in, thanks to leftist agitation, that we're
Mm-hmm.
getting conversations about rent control, or in your St. Paul's pace, actually getting it in.
Mm-hmm.
So, did your council have to do a rent control study first for 3 years?
I'm not sure what the entire process was. I don't think so.
Did,
I,
did they
I
just get
think
ahead of it? Hmm.
it might have even come up as a voter referendum. I'd have to go back and check because I seem to remember voting for that. Yes, in fact, I did. Yeah, it was a voter referendum. That's how it got in. So
Of
it was
course.
on the ballot one year.
Of course.
Yep.
That's one reason to move out to Minnesota/Wisconsin
Hey.
is that, your state, as I've said in previous streams, your states were settled by progressives
Mm-hmm.
in the New England, in New York, who were fed up with the undemocratic nature of our politics.
Mm-hmm.
And because they couldn't get a referendum process, so they started them out there. And this is going back to the 1850s, 40s, because our economy was still almost semi-feudal, and it's why to this day we still don't have referendums in New York.
You
It's
don't
we
have them at
still
all?
not at all.
Oh, that's
Everything
ridiculous.
has to be passed by the state legislators.
Oh, God.
That includes the Senate, which only until a few years ago was still controlled by the Republicans.
I have never understood the need for a state senate. What is the point of the state senate? Like, y-
I think that's obvious
yeah, I
to
mean,
stop the
right.
control. Have you seen the Democratic Assembly? I
No,
mean,
no,
have you seen the state assembly in New York? It
no, I
is
haven't.
it is 4-1 Dems,
Hmm.
right?
I would imagine.
Because
Yeah,
of New York City particularly,
because of New York
but
City,
you
sure.
know, we are a pretty blue state.
Uh huh.
Um, Without the Senate, we would be a socialist, dystopia, according to the right.
Yeah,
Or
because
any
like,
Republican who, how unfair would it be? How unrepresented the politics of any Republican in New York, their lives would be a nightmare because they would, in
Yeah.
fact, have zero political process. But thanks to gerrymandering and the New York Senate, they will always have a disproportionate voice in New York politics.
Gotcha.
And thus we need a moderate governor no matter what.
Hmm.
And
Oh my God, your last governor. Holy crap. Yeah.
3 terms,
Magic.
baby.
Whoa.
And he was not unelected, by the way. I have to unsubstantiated rumor, I suppose, that he is planning to run this year. Though I guess he hasn't
Oh,
announced. I have to look it up. You'd think I'd hear by now if he was.
for
Hold on,
Senate or representative? Are you talking about the national
no,
level?
for
I would assume.
governor.
Oh, for
No, for
governor. Oh,
governor.
good. Oh, okay. Of
He
course.
wasn't unelected. He was forced to resign under duress, but obviously the crisis was
Ah,
past.
gotcha.
There was no
Yeah.
reason for him to bow out. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past him, but regardless,
Yeah. I mean, he seems like a very
Hochul's in for an interesting,
shameless man.
year. We've got the progressives, the Bernie Kratz have Germano. I'm saying his name wrong, but Mr. Williams, who's a pretty DSA soc dem guy. So he'll be a good primary candidate. Certainly more so than Cynthia Nixon or Chout, who could only appeal to PMC white people, which is why they could only get like a third of the vote in the primary.
Hmm.
Even with everything that Como, what a shitlord he was, he still had the machine. And if the precinct captains and the county committees are honest, they're
In his
they're
pocket.
not going
Yeah.
against him, then
Mm-hmm.
he's going to carry the election. So the elections are won in the local party orgs, really, more than anything. We are
Mm-hmm.
still very much party machine driven politics, regardless of AOC winning, here and there. In that district and a few other cases. And obviously there's a number of SOCDEMs elected in New York City politics, but as you've
Sure.
seen, or as anyone could see, New York City hasn't really become a more progressive place.
Right.
You've got, in fact, a reactionary is pretty much elected mayor in Eric Adams, but
I don't know much about him.
Chapo jokes about how he's pretty much the future of the Democrats and that he does absolutely nothing, but he is still likable, which is what the
That's
Democrats
it.
are always
Yeah.
about.
Just
That
say some nice sounding words, and
he
apparently
is
that's
the
all it
uniter.
takes.
Now I want
Oh,
to get off in the next. I want to wrap up in the next 20 minutes.
sure.
So maybe
Yeah. Let's do it.
I'll just do an intro for 4, which is the political campaign,
Okay.
and there is not a lot I have to. It's almost retreading some things.
Hey, no problem.
And so I'm going to leave this, and it's also 40 pages. So
Okay.
it's something to leave for next time. But
Sure.
is there anything? I'm sure there's something else I wanted to talk about, but has left my mind. But here's an example of you would just on election day, you just give people a sample ballot. Like, here's how you fill out your ballot.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the whole like ballot chains would kind of be unnecessary. Like, you'd actually carry this into the polling place with you. But this is even done even today. To like, people have to be shown how to fill out the ballot.
I've gotten those mailers plenty of times.
Okay, yeah. So it isn't just New York.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
yeah. Let's talk. I could talk more to New York stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, we lack a referendum process, and it leads to so much
That's so
defeatism.
ridiculous.
So much defeatism in New York politics. The defeatism is so extreme that like we could have the chance, but because the organizing work would be so uphill and that you'd actually have to do it, a lot of paid organizers will actually say, no, we shouldn't have a chance for change because things could go against us. So every 10 years, we do have a referendum in New York to have a constitutional convention. And we could really shake things up with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But get this. every interest group is against having one because they don't want to give anything up.
Yeah,
Because they fear that the opposition will be able to get what they want in a constitutional convention. That it will be, the money will flow, right, and capitalists will get what they want, or they'll make
that's
things
not
even
unreasonable as a fear.
they'll make
Sure.
the economy even more libertarian or more corrupt
Yeah,
or
yeah.
more monopolistic.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we should view it as like, no, this is the only way we can get anything done because of how calcified our political system is in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to get it through both houses. Even if a locality wants to have a new tax, they have to have it approved by the state legislators. I find this insane, and it probably might be the only reason I actually might move out of state, though
Oh
I have
wow.
no desire to. But it's if there is a reason, that's the reason to move to go to a place that has referendums, so that you can actually put something on the ballot and organize for it. Because otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you have to organize people to call their representative, and that's it. And there's really no other leverage. Electing
Yeah.
people, new people, and then putting pressure on those people. You're entirely dependent on the representatives.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Senate is screwy, then you're fucked. You're fucked. There's nothing you can do. God, for 6 years, like there was Democrats took the Senate, and even that's not good enough because we had 5 senators that broke from the Dems and formed their own caucus so that they could be not the wedge, but the deciding votes of the Senate, and they became immensely powerful. If anything needed to be done, it had to go through them.
Oh, I hate that strategy.
And
I hate how often it works too.
And these were basically moderate Dems, conservative Dems, basically.
Yeah,
who
like the
just
mansion
had
and the
to get their
cinema.
way.
Yeah.
But imagine 5 of them.
Yeah.
And of course 2 of them were like Staten Island and
okay.
and whatever. But and that was a long time ago now. That was during right after Occupy. Now the Dems have the Senate, but obviously leadership is still very much capitalistic and will not pass anything that doesn't that's too radical and what have you. But yeah, the fact that even localities and counties can't do anything because like our hands are tied by but that's the thing, that we have to change the New York Constitution. So
Yeah,
we need to,
it's the only way to get
use
it,
the Constitutional Convention. And here's the thing about the Constitutional Convention. You don't have to win a majority to get representation in the Constitutional Convention.
Oh.
It's only the top in a I think it was by district. I forget if it's congressional or assembly or senate, but
sure.
It's in each district. There's an election, and you can have any number of candidates that are put up by the parties, and you only need the top 3 vote getters. The top 3 vote getters go to the convention, which means you could get second or third place, and still get in. So it's like we Greens could, get.
You got a shot at having a
real
seat at the table, not just
to be there.
Yeah,
and though it wouldn't be a majority, but we would have a poll. We would be able to get some referendums. God, for God's sake, referendums, please. Yeah.
I'm shocked they don't have that.
Well, it was part of a reform movement that occurred in the Progressive era, back when Teddy Roosevelt was president, and because that's when Minnesota got it. And in New York, the machine was still so strong that it dominated and prevented any of those progressive reforms from ever happening. And in fact, it kind of reversed things. And the only way, there was an opening in the 30s when we got like actual lefties elected to local offices, but then that was slapped down and there was no New York Constitutional Convention. I don't know why, but maybe it was something that only started. But the last time New York had one, it was I don't know, 71 or something. But it's every 10 years we have the opportunity, it's on the ballot, and you had every interest group, the unions, good government groups, they all put out mailers, vote no. The only group that was vote yes were the Greens and a few other extremists who actually want to change things in some big way.
Hmm.
Maybe they want to ban abortion, but
Yeah.
so let's see. They will still try to keep you from local news. Will only count red and blue on a TV screen. Yeah, James. Thus, the importance of having community media and how all these different projects intersect in their
Hmm.
importance and doing politics, which
Yep.
is very ill-defined in most Americans, since they're judging it based on what's on TV.
Hmm.
But it's like the first booklet pointed out. Politics is the process of getting political power. What you do with that political power is then determined by your form of government, which is determined by your constitution.
Hmm.
Which and if we had an anarchist society, we wouldn't need a constitution. You don't need to protect rights if we are ensuring them together, because
Hmm.
rights are something you actually enforce and take. It's not
Hmm.
something that's granted or protected, even. Because when it comes to your rights, you got to protect them yourself. And how do you do that? Well, with organizing and solidarity.
Organized locally. Yeah.
Without
Hmm.
these things, you don't have any right.
Right.
You're left with, oh, you can get your rights back in a court of law, but for that
Hmm.
you need money and access to lawyers that know what they're doing,
Hmm.
which can also only be done by having a union. And I consider political parties of a radical persuasion, militant persuasion, one that's antagonistic, to
Hmm.
be a type of political union, a union for doing
I
politics.
like that. That's a
Just
good way of looking
just
at it.
just as a union does all those things in the workplace. And
Yeah.
I kind of I'm a little skeptical whenever I read things about like we can the workplace is the only place to organize.
Hmm.
There's reasons for this, but I think it's
Yeah.
it's no better or worse than organizing in any other
Oh
place or
yeah.
fashion.
Sure.
And we'll get into that with later booklets about like how in electioneering you need like you go to political like clubs, social
Hmm.
clubs, and like what organized social clubs exist? Like there's no
Yeah.
there when a
Not much
convent like
anymore.
there are cultural conventions of various types are organized by committees, but are they organized by an organization that would ever endorse and participate even? We've all been put in the Thatcher box of being apolitical. There's no
Right.
brony organization that would obviously be socialist or should
Yeah.
be um, to even ask for an endorsement. And if you did, they would look at you real funny, even funnier
Hmm.
than a normal person looks at a brony, um, or whatever, or a union of
Uh,
cat people,
there you go.
call
Yeah.
catty,
Cat girls unite. Yeah.
or Marvel, or just your regular Comic Con stuff,
Hmm.
all these subcultures, all this consumerist stuff, but like you got
Yeah.
to
So much of
organize
it
there
is
too. Oh
organized
yeah, and
around
I actually I gotta
consumerism.
mention this. In North Carolina, great Green Party organizer actually said he was going to petition at a Comic Con and was looking at
Hey, why
advice
not? Yeah.
because he didn't have any cosplay. He's a noob when it comes to that, and so we were all kind of making funny suggestions. And I was trying to be half funny, half practical. Forget what I actually suggested, but just like if you have any kind of media shirt, just to show that you're not like the type of person who's like, oh, I don't watch television. It's or movies are for losers or something. Just any kind of media shirt will express some solidarity with everyone else there. Or better yet, I think he sort of implied that he went in and bought stuff. So and then he had
There
to
you
go
go.
somewhere,
Yeah.
something like that.
It's a good
I
strategy.
don't
Yeah.
know how I don't know how if he would be allowed to petition inside, but it's always a matter of just do it until you're
I
kicked
guess
out.
it's up to the organizers, right? Yeah.
You don't ask, just
So,
do it. just go in, buy
Right.
a ticket. I
Ask
paid a
for
ticket.
forgiveness
I'm
rather
allowed
than
to do stuff.
permission. Sure.
You have all these booths signing people up for stuff. Like
Yeah. Why shouldn't that be a
I
two-way street for sure?
I don't have a booth. Okay. Any other questions before close out for the week? Um, I know there wasn't too much there with that. Just covering electioneering,
Yeah. No, it's
the
important stuff to understand.
the registration, because
Registration.
it's not just registering people to vote; it's also collecting their contact information.
And then
Some people are
getting them to the
very
polls.
some people are very skeptical in giving over their information. They don't want to be
Right. Right.
spammed.
Absolutely.
Always important. I always make a point to say we don't spam. We just send emails for our meetings and
Right.
maybe some call to action. But we try to keep them once a month, not too frequent, because you could, if you're like a general good government group or some email blasts, like they or even just the National Green Party list, they send an email almost every other day.
Yeah. That gets to be
Mostly
overwhelming.
related to the news of the day, though. Like, say when something happens,
True,
they
but yeah,
relate it as a fundraiser kind of ask, which is a little annoying, especially as I'm already a dues paying member. But
it
it's
does. Yeah.
automatic. Um,
And you'd hear about like the subject lines for like the DNC during the last presidential election and be like, if you do not donate today, $45, the Democrats are done. We're toast. We're gonna be out for a generation. All these like doom and glooms, and
Now, we
it'd be
don't
like
say the
every
Green Party's
day.
in trouble. You say if you don't donate, we're all going to die in a climate catastrophe.
That's
So
right.
it's that, or we need to fight fascism.
Right.
But yeah, like anyone else, and it's also the bias of like once you give someone some money, they'll keep asking you for more money, which is in fact
Mm-hmm.
something on the other side is a conversation. Like they gave once, you ask them again for more because
Sure.
they can either afford
Yeah.
it, or
Yeah.
you ask them
Yeah.
later in the year, or you just keep asking. And it's not enough to just ask once, but that's where I get a little like, this doesn't feel good, but there's no other way until we have actual enough members that pay dues,
Right.
and even those, when you have enough, you ask for little bits of money too,
Yeah.
but you got to ask for those dues. And
Yep.
yeah, and because how else did Smalls and the committee raise, how like they had their encampment going, and I wonder how they funded that, except maybe they were asking people for some dollars, at the bus stop first.
They must have. That must have, because
Yeah.
they built up an entirely new union from scratch. So that's, you can't just rely on national dollars flowing in for
Oh, they
a worthy
mentioned that there
cause. So.
was no, they did mention that one of the established unions gave them a meeting space.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that's
it
something. That's material support.
it wasn't a headquarters, but they had their meetings there, I think.
Okay,
And
that's cool.
that would be something that would occur locally with us. But yeah,
Yeah, they must have
so
been getting
obviously
funding
we can
somewhere.
revisit this in the other chapters.
Sure.
Otherwise, just tell you about the Three Left show. My last
Yeah. Let's
episode that
bring
I
it
did
up.
last week and posted on the Left Boost page is about
Yes.
turfs.
There you go.
The first hour covers turf history, and in particular the Supreme Court ruling that was about a year and a half ago, which did rule that trans people are covered under by sex by gender. They can be ruled as discriminated against by their sex. So you could say they have sex-based rights.
Is this the one? Architectural culture war? Is that, or is that
Oh
not it?
no, it should
No.
be. You had it up.
Uh,
That one.
oh, okay. This one here.
There it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird that it. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Left Wing Cultural War 5: Protection or Solidarity.
solidarity. So that's the theme I kind of went with.
Nice.
Otherwise, my former title was Reactionaries in Our Midst, but that was too vague, I think. So then I also talk about I cover someone who gives a breakdown of the kink at Pride debate that occurred last year,
Oh God, that
which
debate.
Well, I
Wow.
like this guy's take in that he pointed out that most of the, you know, conflict was basically Nazis or teens who were actually Nazis in disguise,
Yeah.
um,
And then there's
complaining
Riley
about
Grace.
complaining
And
about Kink at Pride and getting Vosh to make dumb
yeah.
comments about it,
Yeah.
if I recall.
Yeah. He had a big conflict with I think it was Riley Grace Roshang, who was a conservative, like culturally conservative leftist. Like she's very prudish
Yeah,
about
right, yeah, yeah.
sexual issues.
Very prudish. I
Hmm.
reference her actually, but not
Oh, you
by
do?
name.
Okay.
I didn't remember the name, but the take she had that like if someone's having dirty thoughts about me, like we're on a bus and they're just thinking sexual thoughts
Right.
about me, just looking at me,
Uh huh.
that's sexual assault.
Yes. You
And
violated
and
that person's consent
or
by
oh no,
thinking.
actually it went beyond that. It wasn't right that, but then I think they went even further by saying that if they're just having sexual thoughts, then
Uh
they
huh.
are like in public, they're a pervert.
Right.
And we shouldn't have them, and that's not decent. And that if a
Right.
child is in the same like bus,
Yeah.
then they're being a pervert around children, and they
Right.
should be
Yeah.
locked
No,
up.
she had a more
And
recent take when she was talking about how if you have a foot fetish and you and your partner are out in public in bare
mhm,
feet and getting
yeah,
off on that, even if nobody
right.
knows what's going
Yeah, yeah,
on,
that's pre
if there are kids around,
they're
that
not
that's
they're worse
you
than
are
perverts, they're
you're
preverts.
right. You're committing sexual assault on everyone. It's like literally thought crime.
It was so weird.
Uh, yeah,
But that's
that was
that's
that
that's
was a weird
that
one.
when you don't have enough solidarity, you're just left with reactionary. No matter like how do you come to and this is something we need to figure out so we can maybe help our comrades to be or wayward comrades of
Right.
how do you have such socialist politics and then that are solidarity with workers and other
Hmm.
oppressed peoples, maybe even black people. But then when it comes
Hmm.
to trans people or others that are, when sex is involved, then it's suddenly about protecting the kids and
Yeah.
sounding and making common calls with literal Nazis
Yep.
and
Yep.
other types of fash.
Yeah.
And that's what's occurred in the UK, and it happens on a smaller scale
Oh.
here.
Yeah. No,
Because in Green Party pages, Facebook ones, the turfs were such a um, wave of harassment that like
seriously, within the Green Party, even.
any post, it was more like a gaggle of 50 of them. Like it was just certain names would just keep fucking coming back. It's like all they were just trolling
So there's
every post
committed
having to do with trans
harassers.
rights.
Gotcha.
And the situation with Georgia, they were kicked out of the party, and that's what I cover in the last section of the show. Um, in the second hour, I cover transports with some good takes, but not the full takes. I link a video um, that was also watched by the Surfs, and that was really good. Um, and the thing to remember with transports is that the true inequality between men and women is socially economically constructed. It's in the same way that you need separate categories for like yeah, it's like the women's category is like affirmative action for women to be in sports. So if women were on the same level as men, both with the training and the support, the meaning finance like the actual money support, resources,
Hmm.
and all the other things, they could catch up with men and be at the same level.
I just saw. Yeah, I was just listening to some YouTube videos about. I think we probably saw
Right,
the
yeah.
same one.
So
Hmm.
so at least on the left, we're coming to a consensus to and then maybe that's what's missing. Like we if we all
Hmm.
have a party line
Hmm.
to throw back at any reactionary behavior or takes, then we can stamp it down or correct people before it's becoming a topic of confusion of I don't know what to think about this.
Right.
Maybe these people are right. Maybe they have a point.
Right.
And that's I felt like that last year quite often. And I did not like that feeling at all.
Hmm.
Where I'm like
Yeah.
I'm reading and I link that as well things written last year. Like you read the stuff about fairness in sports. The trans women are making things unfair, or protection. It's like this is something that most Americans identify with, because reactionary politics is American bread and butter.
Yeah,
It's the
that's for sure.
water we're in, and we're trying to get people out of the fucking pond that's polluted. So I'll leave with that. So that's been the show. You can find it at 3lefts.news,
Yep.
online at Facebook, and I've shared it to the left thing. And if you can share it yourself, Zach, that would be
I
great.
will. Yep.
I've been too distracted by other things to put time and effort into the collective that you have been helping grow, and you've been putting a lot of attention into that. And I thank you.
I appreciate it. You're welcome.
I
Yeah.
hope that
It's been
eventually it
great.
can. I hope eventually it could be like we form a committee of members of this, and it's
That's the long term vision, to make like a
more than
real
sharing
cooperative out of it.
content. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
we can make a single channel where we are
Uh huh.
uploading our videos to that, and we're like the
Yeah.
Young Turks, but
Yep.
it's actually leftist.
Yep. And I mean that's basically what we have on Facebook right now. Anyone who's a member of that of the collective can stream or post videos directly as Left Signal Boost TV.
Mhm.
So that more or less is the same sort of thing. There's another channel out there called Act TV, and they do that the same sort of thing. They have like the Benjamin Dixon show that they broadcast simultaneously all the time, and they have a few other ones too.
I
But
think
yeah,
oh yes, God, it's been so long.
mhm.
But yeah, I understand. Yeah, and sort of the main model to follow is the Real News Network, but that was more like a
Okay.
community run television station that was, instead of being on TV, it made YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But in a studio with reporters that were paid
Sure.
to do journalism, and they're just they're in Baltimore, and they did Baltimore stuff, but then they would also cover global stuff, and they would use Zoom video chat to cover and have their own stable of talking heads who were
Hmm.
actually of a lefty persuasion, or something of that nature, or the very least
That's
not a
cool.
status quo person.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's another idea.
we are the
A
talking
single.
heads. Now we just need the journalists.
Need more
Okay.
cityscapes in our
So
background to
good
make it look
night.
official. Yeah.
I should.
Thanks
Oh
for
yeah,
joining once
good
again.
job there.
Thanks.
I can't wait till next two weeks from now. We'll
Yeah,
do this
I'm excited
again.
for next time. Continue on.
I
This has
like
been a
the
great
regularity.
series. I really like this, and I think it's stuff that no one is really talking about right now, but a lot of more people need to be talking about. I think it's vital information to get out there. So I do appreciate you
Absolutely.
putting in the effort, doing all the readings. That's got to be hard on the voice. Uh, I know when I've done reading out loud, it's been a slog to
No
get through.
acid reflux today. I'm grateful for that.
Awesome, awesome.
It's because I worked out yesterday, but then I didn't
There
stretch.
you go.
I also spent time changing a light bulb, but then the light bulb was stuck, so then I had to change the whole fixture, and
Ooh,
it's a good arms
that,
workout.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
All right,
All right. Thanks again. See you next time, Dan.
bye.
Bye. All right. So there's that Three Left show. The link is in the chat there. Should be on all the different places that you're able to see this. Um, I'll go ahead and I'll post it up on my uh, Bread Theory Facebook page, so you can take a look at the most latest episode there. Let's see. Only one person, only myself on Twitch right now, so not enough people to raid. So as we've been doing, I'll just pick someone from the Left Signal Boost TV collective. Here is the link again for that. Go check out Left Signal Boost TV, where you'll be able to see episodes of the Three Left show are always posted there. Dan is a member, as well as we're now up to, I think, 13 creators who are all sharing that page and posting live streams, YouTube videos, artwork, kind of whatever we got. We have a wide variety of creators so far, and it's been a steady stream of different talents that we've been able to attract in, or who have self-recruited. So it's been great to see, and I really have high hopes for its potential to have us all come together and collectively push back against the Facebook algorithm that faces the likes of, or favors, excuse me, the likes of Ben Shapiro and I think Glenn Beck. It's just the worst reactionary types tend to get favored by the Facebook algorithm. But this is a way we can use our collective efforts to hopefully turn that around. So go give us a like and a follow there, and you'll be able to see all kinds of cool content continuously. We tend to have quite a few live streams every week. So this week I will feature Brenton Langle, who is an author, did a graphic novel called Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. And then his most recent endeavor has been Darude, Shadow of the People, which is about the anarchist movement during the Second Spanish Republic and the Spanish Civil War against Franco's fascists. So really interesting stuff, beautifully illustrated, an important story about anarchism in action from history. So it's a real world example of anarchy in action. Really cool stuff. Also, he does a lot of debates. Nice. Good to hear it, James. I'm glad that the algorithm has not taken away your notifications, and that's another good reason for anyone watching this at any time to go and like the Left Signal Boost TV page, or my personal page, Bread Theory, on Facebook, because then you can set the notifications so that you'll get notified every time I go live, so that you'll make sure to catch all the content and be able to interact in real time. So there's Brenton Langle's stuff. That's his YouTube channel right there, but I'm sure he has links to all his other stuff there as well. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. I'm going to try and stream tomorrow night. I have my first day of my new job, so may not have my normal schedule nailed down yet. Maybe going later than usual. I'm thinking maybe more like 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'm not entirely sure what the subject is going to be. I want Monday nights to turn into the night that we do A People's History of the United States audiobook, because I think it's just such a vital book for this time. I've seen so many parallels to systems of oppression that reverberate throughout American politics until this day, that I think it's really important to get that context and that history, but to also see those systems of power as they iterate, time after time after time, and see the common links that they have, because that's the best hope that we have of uniting together and fighting it. So that's what I want Monday night to be. It's going to take some time, though, because many of the chapters, because Howard Zinn used primary sources, particularly quotes from people at the time, oftentimes there are racial slurs. So I don't see any need to include that in a reading of the audiobook. So I'm going to have to go through chapter by chapter and kind of timestamp each time one of these slurs comes up, and then put out my own cleaned up version of the chapter, just taking out the slurs, nothing else, so that we can watch that together and not have to hear that horrific language, because everyone knows what is being said. You don't have to hear the word said again and again. It adds nothing to the actual impact of it or the reading of history. So it's going to take some time, but that's what I want to be one of my next big projects on this channel. In terms of the regular theory stuff that we do on Wednesday, we're going to be continuing on with chapter 28. No, we're still in chapter 27. We didn't get all the way through last time, of Alexander Berkman's What is Communist Anarchism. We're coming up to the end of the book. We only have 4 chapters after this current one, and they're all much shorter than the current chapter as well. So we're coming up to the end of that book, and on the Wednesday shows, I'm going to start transitioning into doing more like essays and shorter stuff, so that we can cover a wider scope of authors and thinkers. I do like the long form books, but I think they need to have a special slot because it takes so long to digest them. And so I'd like to cover a bunch of different thinkers and figures in the meantime through the short form, the video, or the essay. So we'll transition into that after we get through Berkman's work. But I'm really enjoying that book a lot. A lot of great stuff on the potential power of anarchism. He's just gotten to the point where he's talking about how he sees a revolution happening. One where, not a shot is fired from your side, at least not initially, where instead you call a general strike. And if enough of the country puts their minds to it, just a stoppage of work until the owners give up the control of the means of production to their workers. There's no real force on earth that could stop that sort of thing. That's not to say they wouldn't try, because when general strikes happened, as I've been finding out in Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, in the past in the U.S., when general strikes have been called, they've been tremendously successful in gaining concessions, but at the same time, the ruling class gets so scared that they immediately send in like the National Guard and start shooting people, like just shooting people, not even, ramping up force, but moving to it, seeing it, taking it as an insurrection, a revolt against the government and the order of things, which just goes to show you what they really think of things as they are now. They don't see things as having the potential to be egalitarian or fair for everybody. They like things as they are, where they get the most benefit as owners, and the working class, who cares? They're the dumb teeming masses to them. So they get very offended and very afraid when that mass of working class proves to not be as controllable as they had previously thought. Anyway, all right, I think I'm just going to end it here, and hope to see y'all tomorrow night. Probably we'll shoot for 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time back on this channel. Thank you for joining, and yeah.